Right from the start, the sound of this album leaves us completely surrendered, a sound that takes us back to the 80s when thrash metal was the most extreme thing there was to consume, and when that search for the extreme always started with a bass that had venom and then took the bands and listeners to something blasphemous and proper to black metal. Atonement capture this feeling perfectly with a furious and raw album that is a feast for all those who wish the early Sodom had been a little more technical and Creator a little more violent.
The term alternative metal may be as lazy as alternative, but it's on albums like The Essence that it makes perfect sense. With a modern feel to both the production and the vocals, the connection to metal comes precisely from the guitar work. Not only because of the heaviness and riffs, but also curiously because there are many solo guitar lines that are a real surprise, as well as being delicious to the ears. It may be a contradiction to have something that we call alternative when it then drinks so much from the traditional, but the truth is that it works perfectly in this set of songs.
The excellent cover art gives a good indication. Ukrainians Karpathian Relict have released their third album and have made a good impression on anyone who likes technical and interesting death metal. The interesting part comes down to not losing sight of the concept of song, which can sometimes be sacrificed in favor of praising the technical part. Here we have a perfect combination of the two, which could only be a little better if the vocal approach were richer or more elaborate. However, for anyone who is a fan of the style, this is an excellent death metal album, very difficult to turn your back on.
Israel's Obsidian Tide could well be the surprise of the year for progressive metal lovers who may not have caught 2019's debut. Fans of Riverside, Opeth, and even Porcupine Tree may find here a potential competitor to all those names. Despite this name dropping, and the fact that we do find a few influences here and there, the grand crescendo never fails to sound extremely fresh and original. A musical journey that goes against the grain and for that reason alone can only be felt as an exciting proposal within the progressive music spectrum.
Trespass are one of those inspiring cases that prove it's never too late to follow your dreams. Their career has been troubled over the years, with instability preventing them from riding the wave of success of the new wave of British heavy metal in the early 80s. In recent years, they have managed to reverse those initial problems, and now with Wolf at the Door, they have reached their fourth album of Original. An album that is far from being as visceral as the cover suggests, but which is a perfect portrait of the hard and heavy class that was confined to the 80s, and which only Trespass have managed to illustrate.
The Silver Linings debut album leaves a lot to be desired by fans of psych rock. It's a sensibility that seems to belong to another era, but which, nowadays, couldn't fail to sound contemporary. After all, astral travel is something ancient and never loses its charm. Pinkfish manages to bring us the feeling of abstraction that is so desired when we listen to psych rock, a feeling that is still visceral due to the rock and roll soul that is also present here, something that the second half of In the Fleeting Hand of Time. An album that's easy to fall in love with.
This is the solo project of Vrajitor, known for his presence in bands such as Warmoon Lord and Arganthorn. Although this is a long-standing project, the composition for this debut only took place between last year and this year. An album that is a tribute to the soundtracks of Italian horror films that have been immortalized musically with proposals such as Goblin and Fabio Frizzi, who are maximum references in what we can find here. Instrumental, not counting occasional spoken word passages, the good taste of this set of songs is impressive. Lovers of progressive rock, even if they don't appreciate the aforementioned influences, will be fascinated by this album. A promising debut.
Celebrating 20 years of one of the most influential heavy/power metal bands of the new millennium. 20 years since the release of their first album, since their career began before that. Being a Greek band, and with Greek fans being some of the most devoted and fanatical for traditional heavy metal, it's not surprising that they preferred to celebrate at home. 20 years, 20 songs, one of which is an inspired drum solo, on a Blu-ray, and 10 on each CD, in a very attractive package. Not only does this album show the band at the top of their game, but it's also an excellent way of introducing them to new fans. The latest and excellent self-titled album was the most represented work, and the only one left out was Forged by Fire. A perfect performance that is worth immortalizing with a concert with excellent image and sound.
A bold album by our friend Thomas, which, in addition to a few covers, brings us some original songs that go beyond the purely acoustic spirit. The title track, for example, evokes a very exciting mix of jazz fusion and prog rock, much more than the fusion of the two genres would suggest. And then, of course, there are versions of Maiden, Flash of the Blade Alice Cooper, Poison, Deep Purple, Highway Star, Dream Theater, Panic Attack, Surprising and Excellent, and many others. There are also some very special guest appearances, including Key Marcello, Exurup Derek Sherinian, Sons of Apollo, ex-Dream Theater Damian Wilson, ex-Threshold, and others. An impressive gathering of themes and musicians on an album that both takes a minimalist acoustic approach and expands it to include a series of unusual instruments and voices. Good music.
An album by a Portuguese project we didn't know about, which is always a good thing, even if the music isn't exactly memorable. It seems that the band is made up of an instrumental trio which includes Ju Farina, ex-Earthquake 55, on vocals, and it is precisely in this department that we have the biggest problem, I'm not even counting, with the cover. If the band's heavy metal sounds a bit old-fashioned, like the underground of the 1990s, when the style was on the slums, the vocals don't help to change that paradigm. It's a work that ends up not being memorable, and when it is, it's not for the best reasons. The talent is there. Now it's a matter of trying to materialize it in the best way.